This is my first official video, so I want to say welcome. I'll have many different series published on this channel, but I'm going to start with this one called Watching Best Picture. As the name implies, I'm going to be watching all the best pictures and talking about them. I love movies and embrace all genres, countries, budgets, whatever. But a while ago, I was reflecting on my watch list and I realized that I've got a blind spot when it comes to older movies. I've seen some classics like 12 Angry Men 1957 and Psycho 1960, but I still feel like my watch library is limited. It's a problem I've created myself. As more movies come out every year or a friend recommends a new one, older films tend to fall down my watch list. Realizing this, I came up with a solution. Challenge myself to watch every best picture. If you don't already know, the first Oscars took place in 1929. Since that time, a movie has been awarded every year with the best picture. Well, technically the first Best Picture winner won the award Outstanding Picture. Another film won the Unique and Artistic Picture award, and both of those categories were considered the biggest awards at the first ever Academy Awards. But the year after, the Academy decided to drop the Unique and Artistic Picture award. So for this challenge, I just decided to watch the film that won the Outstanding Picture award for no other reason than the Academy granting the movie we watched for this video the Best Picture award after getting rid of the Unique and Artistic Picture. Now, in the present, the Oscars do not have the best reputation. In my lifetime, there have been some questionable choices, but this blog series is not a celebration of the Oscars. I don't see them as irrelevant, but I also don't think of them as the ultimate authority on movies. But the fact of the matter is that they've picked a movie every year since 1929, and it's an easy way to watch some old and well-recognized movies. With all that said, let's get into it. The first movie chosen by the Academy was the 1927 silent film Wings! I say it like that because it has an exclamation point. Quick side note, the first Oscars was hosted in 1929, but was for the movies in the years 1927 and 1928. For the sake of the experience, I went into the film with no prior knowledge of it, other than the title. And going forward, I think I'll continue to do that because it was exciting to see a film I know nothing about. And when I say a film I know nothing about, I mean nothing. From the director to the cast, I did not recognize anyone, which is not surprising considering I said I had not seen that many older films. So after my first watch, I did some Googling, and let me tell you that this film was star-studded. First, it was directed by William A. Wellman. This man directed over 80 films and was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. 3 Best Directors, A Star is Born 1937, Battleground 1949, and The High and the Mighty 1954, and 1 for Best Original Story, A Star is Born 1954. That's right, the story has been remade multiple times, including the most recent one, starring Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, started with this man. I want to note that Wellman directed and co-wrote this movie with co-writers Robert Carson, Dorothy Parker, and Alan Campbell. But unbeknownst to me, this man has had an influence on modern cinema. Look how long of a gap between his first Oscar win and his last. Almost 30 years of celebrated cinema. On top of that, the man was a fighter pilot. Why is that impressive? Well, flying a giant tube of metal is always impressive, but Wings is a movie about World War I fighter pilots, and Wellman served in the French Foreign Legion as a fighter pilot. The director was not the only one with flying experience. The 2 male leads, Charles Buddy Rogers and Richard Arlen, had flying experience as well. Charles Rogers was known as an actor and musician. His nickname was America's Boyfriend, and he took flight training during the course of the making of the film in order to be able to be filmed close up in the air. This training later came in handy when he served as a flight training instructor for the U.S. Navy during World War II. Richard Arlen served in Canada as a pilot during World War I. He was also a U.S. Army Air Force's flight instructor in World War II. All the while, he was a decorated actor. In a movie about World War I fighters, this cast was stacked, and it surprised me how qualified, not just in the acting department, but in the aerial skill department as well. For Clara Bow, what she lacked in pilot experience, she had plenty of acting experience. The female lead of this movie was a star back in the day. Starring in 46 silent films and 11 talkies, the fact that she successfully transitioned from the silent era to talkies is a testament to her abilities. And I keep trying to figure out a different way of saying talkies, but honestly it's the most fun. She was named first box office draw in 1928 and 1929, and second box office draw in 1927 and 1930. At the height of her popularity, she got over 45,000 fan letters in a single month. Do you know the cartoon character Betty Boop? She was modeled after Clara Bow. And even more recently, Margot Robbie's character in 2022's Babylon is a fictionalized character loosely based on Clara Bow. I did not know going into this movie how star-studded it would be. But that's enough about the cast and crew. Let's talk about the film itself. And I want to say off the top that I was pleasantly surprised with this film. I was worried that I was going to start this challenge with a dud, but Wings delivered. This movie was like a 100-year-old Top Gun Maverick. I was impressed with a lot of the technical aspects and cinematography in this film. It could be an early film bias that I have, but I found this film a lot more engaging than I would have guessed. Nowadays, a story of two men battling over a woman's love is nothing new, but add the backdrop of World War I, the secret love of Clara Bow's character, and the emotional ending, and you get a story that even today seems fresh. The full film is on Wikipedia. That's right, it entered public domain in 2023. I would recommend movie lovers watch this piece of movie history. And to think that this movie was almost lost forever. The original negatives were lost, and this movie was thought to be a lost film, but a spare was discovered in a Paramount vault in Paris, which seems like it could be its own movie in and of itself. The spare was able to be fully restored despite being damaged. The music was also reorchestrated, which gets me to my one big beef with this movie, the music in this film. It plays on the same loop throughout the whole film. The restoration is 144 minutes long, and that music loop gets old quickly. To be honest, halfway through the film, I just muted the film, and it actually improved my experience. Now, the film on Wikipedia does not have the music, don't worry. So whichever version I watch had the music, and if you find my version, be warned. I noted the restoration was over 2 hours long. The original release of this movie was 111 minutes, and I think I would have preferred the shorter version. Don't get me wrong, I adored this movie, but a more concise version might have served this movie better. I would say that the beginning of this film starts slow. It was not until the relationships of the cast gained traction and the battle scenes that the movie really took off. I've done everything in my body to control any plane puns, so forgive me if I indulge myself. Speaking of the battle scenes, those sequences amazed me. The technical prowess in order to get the plane shots or the big battle scenes were impressive. This film used about 300 pilots and enlisted hundreds of extras. The shots facing the pilot, the over-the-shoulder to see the cockpit guns, and the dynamic movement of planes in the background. There were shots that I did not think possible for a 1920s film. To be able to see the pilot and see the biplane behind him and see his reactions to the swoops and dives of the enemies adds a layer to each shot that adds tension and movement to these scenes. There were some cheesy aspects of the fights. I mean, the biggest examples are when the pilot gets hit and they obviously have something in their hand and they hold it against their head or their chest and black goop seeps out. That's the only aspect of the fight that seems dated. The technical aspect of the fight scene is also applied to the flash of color in the film. That's right, there's color in this black and white film, and it's used really well. When a plane gets hit, a flash of orange licks the screen and follows the plane down as it goes. This process to achieve this was called the Hand-Scheigel process. The process was the most widely used form of artificial coloring in the movies in 1920s. The process used dyes that were applied to black and white print. And before watching this film, I had never heard of this process or really knew anything about adding color into black and white film. But the flames applied to these planes were a small but amazing touch, because it added to the danger and highlighted the destruction in the air by the planes. The scope of the battles were impressive as well. The climax of the story is a mock-up of the Battle of Saint-Mihiel. I mispronounced that 100%. The scene was shot near an army base in San Antonio. Before the shoot, Wellman had the army bombard the battleground with field guns to really sell the look of a war-torn battlefield. And that was something stunning from this movie. The battles look so realistic because of the lengths this movie took to make it look real. The trenches were also dug for this movie. From an interview, Wellman had said that the shoot was plagued with bad weather, and the shoot was taking too long waiting for the sun. The battle scene had cameras everywhere, and eventually they got the 5 minutes of sun in order to shoot it. It's crazy to think about the preparation that went into the battle with the extras and the army for 5 minutes of shooting time. Thankfully, the shots came out great, and the end result was a battle to remember. The grand battles were not the only bits of war that were impressive. On a more humanizing side, there were scenes scattered throughout the film that add a lot of emotions into the film. For example, there's a scene where soldiers are getting ready to be sent to the front line for battle. There's a lot of movement between the trucks driving and squads marching on the road, and up above, a German spotter balloon instructs the German artillery towards these targets. Warned by the sound of incoming shells, most of the soldiers duck for cover. Boom, boom, quick impacts. Soldiers get up and continue their march like nothing had happened. But before the shelling, a lone soldier smoked a cigarette against a pole. He did not get downed quick enough during the shelling. A fellow soldier yells at him to get moving, but after the cigarette falls out of his mouth and tumbles to the ground, it's apparent he was hit during the shelling. The soldier yelling at him puts the dead soldier's cigarette out and runs to catch up with his unit. This little scene was powerful in the way it portrayed the quickness of death and the ability for soldiers just to go back to what they were doing. Wellman served in World War I. He knew these little details of war that are so often overlooked. On another note, the aerial shots of the battlefield made the people look like ants, bugs shuffling from one hole to the next. It takes the more humanizing scenes like the soldier to bring the viewer back to reality, that those ants are people and they have lives. It's played perfectly as a connection from the big battles to the relationship of the two male leads. Speaking of which, the two protagonists carried me through this film. The story of two men fighting over a woman only to become best friends is nothing new now, but even this 100-year-old film kept it feeling like something that could be released now. The ending scene between the two was such an emotional and touching moment that made a lasting impression on me. Words did not need to be expressed to see the kind of respect and admiration the two men had for each other. Clara Bow also had a great performance and added another element to the love story. Her character, in love with Roger's character, takes us on the ground in the war and gives us a glimpse into another angle of war life, from driving a truck, taking cover from bombs, witnessing dogfights from the ground, and enjoying the Leave in Paris. Claire's Bow performance required a lot of depth. But back to the movie. There was a little fun animation scene in the Paris bar and the hotel room with bubbles. I thought it was charming. The little bit of color and the little bit of animation gave me the impression that every scene in this movie was given the time and the effort. Fun fact, during that bar scene, Rogers actually got drunk, so some of the reactions that he had were genuine. He recalled in an interview that this was the first time he had ever had alcohol, and the director told him it would loosen him up. I don't think I would want my first time being drunk to be around a bunch of strangers, but I would have not minded being from drinking champagne. All in all, I'm glad the Academy chose this movie as the first Best Picture winner. I was worried coming into this challenge that the first movie was going to be an absolute dud and leave me bored. Yet, now I'm worried that the Academy peaked in 1929. This was such a strong first movie to watch and helped me grow an appreciation for silent films. The technical aspects and the performances just really gave me a second outlook on my perception of silent films. This was a fun watch, and I look forward to the next one. Did you watch it? Did you like it? Email me your thoughts at pressclay@proton.me, and I may share them on the next video. Drop a comment as well. What will be the next movie? Well, the second winner of the Best Picture is the 1929 film, The Broadway Melody. See you then, and I hope you see a good movie today.